Hey guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? This is my review of Without Fail, the sixth Jack Reacher novel. At the time of this recording, I'm about 20 minutes away from the Path of Totality, or at least the extent that we'll get it in Oklahoma City. And I just finished my route. I'm trying to get home because my kids are outside watching it and everything. We're getting little glimpses of it. And even though there's some haze overhead, it's looking like it'll cut through the cloud. I just looked at it with the glasses, and the moon looks to be covering about half of the sun from where we're sitting. So, like I said before, still kind of bummed that I'm not going to get to see the entire thing, but probably in another, 7 years, Totality will cross North America again, and we'll see what I can come up with. All right, Without Fail. This was probably one of the most fun of the Reacher books that I've read. I really liked the second book, like I've said before, and each one has been consistently episodic, but also hits the same notes. There are story beats that every single book has to line up with, like beat 1, Reacher is minding his own business. Beat 2, Reacher helps somebody, but beat 3, this gets him into trouble with somebody else. And beat 4, before we know it, he's swept up in a problem he doesn't want to deal with, but trouble just seems to find him. Beat 5, there's a beautiful woman. Beat 6, Reacher hits that. Beat 7, the bad guys step up their activity, so on and so forth. The plot of this one is, it takes place in November, and year unspecified, but this book came out in 2002. So whatever, doesn't really matter. It's not like it's dealing with real world political figures. But the vice president is getting death threats. And the Secret Service has reason to believe that these ones are legit. Now, Child, the author, he delves into the reality of how the Secret Service handles this. And once again, I'm not sure to what extent all of this is accurate. I just know that he's got a way of presenting information in his world building to make it seem like X, Y, or Z could be real. Maybe he does some research. I don't know. I do remember a podcast interview with him once where he talked about his writing process, and he's basically a discovery writer. He says he doesn't outline, so he must have some idea of what he wants to write, and he just writes towards that, but just writes all day and then goes to sleep, and the next day kind of picks up where he left off and just keeps going. So who knows? I mentioned that, and I'm sure that I've mentioned it before, and I'll probably mention it again in future Reacher reviews, because as you read these stories, you can kind of feel that process. You can feel him writing towards something. So, it's not a problem or anything. Like I said, this particular plot was actually pretty intriguing, seeing the inside workings of the Secret Service. But other than just that, it's a little bit more relevant because his brother, Joe, who was found dead in the first book in Killing Floor, was on assignment with the Secret Service before he died. Or he was, I guess he was dealing with a particular case when he died. And so there's a bit of, picking up where his brother left off, including his brother's penultimate relationship before he died. And one of the things that I like about these books is that obviously there's a big backstory. There's almost 40 years of life behind Reacher. And every book just shows you another series of events or somebody from his past who was relevant to him. Or maybe not every book shows somebody from his past, but there's plenty of fodder for jumping into this and saying, okay, who did you know in your past who was important? Like in the second book, you meet one of his commanding officers or somebody who knows his record who can vouch for him not being a terrorist. And in the third book, he meets the daughter of a former commanding officer who he was very close with in a familial sense, but now that they're older, now that it's been 15 years since they've seen each other, things end up becoming romantic. In this case, there's a new angle to explore in which he is easily able to develop feelings for this woman, for this SS agent. That sounds bad. In the same way that his brother did. And of course, Reacher reminds her of his brother, who she had strong feelings for. And so there are things underneath the surface there that need to be taken care of. And they explore that, not just in a sense of them kind of having a fling themselves, but also, she wasn't quite over his brother, and he has complex feelings towards his family just because of the nature of his life and his childhood. And it's explored in, I think, a meaningful way. It touches emotional chords in a way that feels realistic. And I liked that. The plot itself is, you've kind of seen it before. What's the movie that I was thinking of? There was this 2006 movie with Kiefer Sutherland and Ava Longoria where they also play Secret Service agents and they're trying to protect the president. And who else was in that one? Michael Douglas? And same thing. You get a glimpse at the sheer volume of threats that the White House receives and how the Secret Service has to handle it and all that. Like, that part of it was cool. This is all a trail that's been trod before. They receive the initial threat, then there's escalation, then there's escalation, then there's escalation, and then it comes to a head. I will say that it's a bit of a unique thing to have the Secret Service dead set the vice president. Why does that matter? Why is this significant? The vice president is basically a nothing office, and they talk about the history of it. And then they come to find that, well, it must be something personal about Armstrong, and Armstrong being the name of the vice president in this book, and not political, and they've got to peel back the layers and peel back the layers. Without spoiling anything, I will say this, and this is a consequence of Child's discovery writing method. When you finally get to the point where you find out what the bad guy wants and why, it felt like a stretch. It felt like, okay, there's this whole hint of something sinister, something deep, something meaningful, some reason why somebody would go to all this trouble and use this expert level infiltration to mess with the vice president-elect. He must have done something really messed up. And I guess not every motivation is a fit for every reader. You just have to really buy into not even how petty, but how fragile an antagonist could be in order for them to go to the lengths that they did to make all of this happen. That is probably one of two complaints that I really have about this particular adventure. That and the fact that the ending felt very, very abrupt. Nevertheless, the entire read was satisfying, and I think out of all of the books so far, this one is the longest one, but it didn't feel as long and protracted as some of the others that I've read. This is also the first appearance that you get of Frances Neely, and if you've watched the show Reacher on Amazon, she's been in both seasons. Wait a minute. No, this wouldn't be her first appearance because of the Killing Floor. Now I'm trying to remember, was she in the Killing Floor book? Because they brought her in for the show, but I've read like books 2 through 5 this year. I haven't read the first book in, almost 10 years. I can't remember if she was in the first one. Maybe she was. Anyway, it's significant, and the audiobooks kind of throw me for a curve on this. Her last name is spelled Neagley, but on the show they pronounce it Neely, yet the audiobook narrator says it Nagley or something like that. And it just throws me a little bit. That, and I don't know, I feel like her voice, the way that she's written in the books, is different from how she's acted in the show, but they're both good. It's just, my brain is continually trying to reconcile the way that the actress on the show plays her versus the way that Child wrote her in the books. I like both versions, and since I'm more exposed to the show version, I'm just trying to reconcile the book version to that. But there is also that component of she doesn't like to be touched, and she never explains why. She doesn't shake hands. She doesn't do any of that stuff. And that's also consistent for the show. Maybe we'll find out why. That's kind of why I'm reading the books. I don't know. Overall, I find it comforting, and I think one of the things that I really, really like about this series, and why I'm interested in reading the next 22 that there are that I haven't read yet, is that it's comforting to think that there might be somebody like Reacher out there, somebody who's hard to find, somebody who could be anywhere, somebody who has the tools and the motivation and the intellect to handle the very dangerous problems that Reacher handles, and that he could be doing this stuff out there. He's the kind of guy that you would want to have out there doing what nobody else could and just continuing on his way. That's why I think my friend Brett is such a huge fan of him and has been reading these Reacher novels since they came out, basically, because that's the kind of guy that he would want to be, just somebody who's there to help and protect and all of that. So I'm enjoying them, just tremendously good fun, great entertainment, and even when I've got quibbles, I'm motivated to read the next one. I'm struggling for words here. My sleep schedule got thrown off over the weekend, and so my brain is in a frying pan. Anyway, I'm 12 minutes out from the totality to the extent we're going to get it, and it looks like I'm wearing 2 pairs of sunglasses the way that I'm looking at the world here. But I'll put this video out. I don't know, maybe I'll do 2 videos today, maybe I'll do 2 tomorrow. There's no law saying that I don't have to. Anyway, that didn't make any sense. Whatever. Drive safe. See you out there.